Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday and it's time for our second writing lesson. Our learning intention, we are learning to identify the parts of a narrative. Our success criteria, I can identify the three parts of the narrative: orientation, complication, and the resolution. I can sequence events of a story to match the parts of a narrative. For today's lesson, you're going to need a copy of these 4 worksheets, scissors, glue, or a piece of paper if you're not going to be printing off the worksheets. So let's just quickly go back and review what we know about narratives. Narratives are imaginative texts that tell a story to entertain the reader. There are many types of narratives, such as picture books, short stories, fairy tales, myths and legends. Yesterday we learned about the structure of a narrative, that it has 3 parts: the orientation, the beginning, and that tells the reader who's in the story, when it happened, and where the story happens. The middle part, which is the complication and series events, that tells us what the problem is and what the events that are leading up to the solution. And finally, the resolution at the end of the story, how is the problem solved? Yesterday, we also looked at introducing the story graph. This is a really good thing when you're planning a story to get a really good narrative. You start with that sizzling, step 1 is sizzling start, where you're going to grab the reader's attention. Then you're going to fill in the backfill. This is where you're going to tell them who, when, and where is in the story. Then you've got your middle part, the complication, and you're building up with your problems. It might start with a small problem, then it moves up to the rock, the medium problem, the boulder, the big problem, and finally you've got up to the top of the mountain, the exciting ending. And then you're just going to wrap it up with a quick statement of telling the reader what the characters in the story are going to do now that the problem is solved. Yesterday, I asked you to cut up the pictures of the story for the 3 little pigs and organise them according to the 3 parts of a narrative. So hopefully you got the same pictures as I did for the orientation. I just added 2 sentences to go with them. The 3 little pigs were sent away to seek their fortune. The 3 little pigs built their houses out of straw, wood and bricks. For the complication, the sequence of events, the wolf huffed and puffed and blew the straw house down. The first little pig ran to his brother's house made of wood. The wolf huffed and puffed and blew the wooden house down. The first and second pigs ran to their brother's house made of bricks. And the resolution, the wolf huffed and puffed but could not blow down the brick house. The wolf tries to climb down the chimney. The pigs put a large pot of boiling water at the bottom of the chimney. The wolf falls into the pot, then jumps up out of the chimney. The first and second little pigs agree not to be so lazy. Each builds another house of bricks just like their brothers. So here's our first writing task, and we're going to do this one together. So have a copy of the blank 3 Little Pigs story graph, and take the time now to just quickly turn off the video or pause the video and cut up the parts of the story graph. All right, so now you've got them cut up, let's create our story graph together. Number 1, let's find our sizzling start. So at the top here, glue on the 3 little pigs set off to build their homes for themselves. They are warned to watch out for the wolf. Then the step number 2 is our backfill. This is where we're telling the reader the characters of the story and setting up the story of why it's taking place. Sometimes it can also tell us when and the time it's taking place or where it's taking place. In this case, we've just got the why, so our characters are the 3 little pigs and the wolf, and their mother said that they were old enough to have houses of their own. Then we've got our 3 parts to our complication. The first one we're going to stick down is number 3, the pebble. The wolf blows down the house made of straw. The first little pig runs to his brother's house of wood. Then we're building up to the rock. The wolf blows down the house made of wood, and the first and second little pig escape to their brother's house made of bricks. We're coming up to the boulder. The wolf huffs and puffs that the house of brick doesn't fall down. Then we're coming to our resolution, our exciting ending. The wolf climbs down the chimney and falls into the pot of boiling water. Then he jumps out of the chimney and runs away. And then finally, step 7 is our character wrap-up. The first and second little pigs feel sorry for being lazy and build another 2 brick houses. And now you've created your own copy of a story graph. So just like yesterday, I'm going to read you another well-known fairy tale. As I read you the story, I want you to think about breaking the story down into the 3 main parts of a narrative. What part of the story was the orientation? What part of the story was the complication and series of events? And what part was the resolution? All right, Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time there was a boy called Jack. Jack lived in a cottage with his mother. They were very poor, and their most valuable possession was a cow. One day, Jack's mother asked him to take the cow to the market to sell. Along the way, Jack met a man who wanted to buy the cow in exchange for a handful of beans. "No, thank you," said Jack. "We need the money to buy food." "But these are magic beans," said the man. "If you plant these tonight, come the morning, you will never have to worry about food or money ever again." Jack wasn't sure what the man meant, but he couldn't help imagining how wonderful it would be to have food and money forever. When Jack came home with the beans, his mother was angry. She threw the beans out the window and sent him to bed. The next morning, Jack looked out the window. A giant beanstalk had grown in the garden. Jack decided to climb it. When Jack finally reached the top, he saw an enormous castle. Jack went inside and saw a giant with a golden harp and a hen that laid golden eggs. When the giant fell asleep, Jack took the hen and the harp and started to run back to the beanstalk. The giant woke up and chased after Jack, climbing down the beanstalk. As Jack got to the bottom of the beanstalk, he shouted, "Help!" His mother came and chopped down the beanstalk. The giant fell and was never seen again. They sold the golden harp and eggs at the market for so much money that they never had to worry about being poor ever again. Jack and his mother lived happily ever after. Our writing task today is exactly the same as yesterday. Once again, I've given you the pictures off of the story. This time it's Jack and the Beanstalk, and what I'd like you to do is to cut them up and sequence them according to the orientation, complication, and resolution. Once you've finished, can you take a photo of yesterday's worksheet and today's worksheet and upload them into our completed work document for week 2?